welcome to another lawnfawn video. Today we are introducing our brand new stamp set, Rub-a-Dub-Dub, and its coordinating dies. So let's go ahead and check it out. First up, we have this adorable little mama duck, and then all of her little baby ducks, and we have them in different styles and facing different directions. We have a cute bathtub that the ducks can play in, and some bubbles for that bathtub too. We also have a shower head and some water to come from the shower head. And then we have different styles of bubbles in different sizes and shapes. We've got a cute little bubble bath holder, a little boat and a rubber ducky for the bathtub, a thing of soap, and then some little water splashes here that you can stamp to kind of create the water around the tub. And then we have some great sentiments. So we have Rub-a-Dub-Dub, a new baby to love. We have It's Your Day, relax and enjoy. We have I'm a lucky duck, to have you as my, and you can do mom, dad, or friend. And we have a cute little heart too. I'm going to be using my Copic markers today to color in these images, although I think these would look really, really gorgeous with those real brush pens, colored pencils, and watercolor because those are kind of softer, but I love my Copic, so I just had to use them today. And in this case here, I'm coloring the duck in these kind of brighter yellows, but I also like using Y32, 35, and 38 for kind of a more muted duck. And so I'm adding some shades there where the curves of the stamp are, under his little wing and around his little curves. And then I'm going to follow the same idea for all of the little baby ducks so that they all coordinate. So you can see there I'm adding my dark color and then blending it out with my light. And then I can go ahead and repeat that again. So I'm adding my dark around those edges and at the curves and then blending it out with my medium and then my light marker. And I'll repeat the same thing. Lay down my light, medium, dark, and then medium and then light marker. I started off for these for my little duck feet there, and I didn't really like it that much, so I switched to these markers. So you can kind of play around with your oranges and see what coordinates the best. And then for my little bubbles, I just add a little BG11, then 10, and then I blend it out with my colorless blender so that it's not just plain white, but it has just a little bit of something going on. I love using warm grays for the bathtub because it kind of reminds me of those old claw-footed tubs. So I'm just adding some of the warm grays out on the edges and then blending it out with my colorless blender into white in the middle. I'm going to use some neutral grays for the shower head to kind of give it that kind of silvery metal kind of look to it. And then I can go ahead and start coloring the accessories. So I'm going to create a nice little neon-y little rubber ducky. I actually kind of Googled rubber duck and tried to match the colors that I could see in the pictures. And then for the little bow, I'm going to add some of that turquoise to kind of go along with those little turquoise bubbles that created, and then a little warm gray little sails for it to also kind of match everything. In this case, I'm using markers that are really far apart from each other, so I'm touching the light one to the dark one to create a medium shade to help me blend between the two since I didn't have that middle marker between those. And then I'll add a little color to my soap. Now these are the coordinating dies which you can bend apart at the tabs or you can use your wire snips to separate them. I'm going to take the coordinating dies and line them up with my stamped images using some post-it note tape to hold them in place. Once I have them all laid out, I can go ahead and run them through my die cut machine and get a perfectly cut cute little duck. I just love how cute they are when they pop out of the dies. So here are all the stamped images that we have, and you can really play around with these images. So you can layer those little bubbles behind the bathtub to create this cute little bubble-filled bathtub. You can add the shower head and the water, and then you can also layer the ducks in the bathtub. So I like to layer one duck either in front or behind of the little bubbles. So in this case, I'm going to add my big duck, and then I'm going to take my bubbles and put those in front, and then I can take the little baby duck and put it in front of that. And that adds a lot of dimension without actually having to use any kind of pop dots or anything like that. So you'll see there when I add that little duck just how cute that is. It's just adorable. And then of course you can add all of the little accessories around to set your scene. I'm using a white gel pen to add some cute little shine marks to my characters. Audrey and Elena always do this in our design team, and Nicole too, and I think it's so cute, so I wanted to try it for myself. So I'm kind of going around the curves and adding little curved white lines, and it just gives them this cute little kind of cartoon appearance. I'm also doing it for the tub and the shower head too. Now I wanted to add some glitter to these bubbles. So I'm taking my glue tube here and I'm adding glue to these little bubbles, and then I'm going to take some tweezers and I'm just going to dip it into my little jar of Prisma glitter, which is the nice fine glitter, to give it that really cool, sparkly, pretty appearance. And so here you can see how beautiful and glittery it is, and now I can go ahead and repeat that with my other bubbles. This card that I'm creating right now is a card by Audrey that I asked her if I could recreate it for the video because it is just stunning, and she said yes, so thank you so much, Audrey. Now here you can see I'm adding just a little bit of glue, in this case just to the top parts of the bubbles, just so that there isn't too much glitter, although I don't know if there's such thing as too much glitter, but you know. And then I'm going to add a little glitter to these soap bubbles as well. Now here I've got my quilted backdrop die, and I'm going to die cut this from some white cardstock, and you can see just how gorgeous this paper is, and it works really well as kind of like a bathroom wallpaper, which is what we're going to be using it as today. Now I've created a standard size card base at 5.5 by 4.25, and I'm using my glue tube here to add glue in between all of those little holes that the die has. That way no glue kind of comes through the holes. So I just put it in all of those little kind of diamonds, and I was able to glue that onto my card base. Here I have a stitched rectangle frame, and I'm going to run that through with some white cardstock also, and I'm going to add some more glue there to that frame and then layer that frame onto the card base to kind of give it a nice little frame to that beautiful quilted backdrop. Next, I'm going to trim a little piece of Gotta Have gingham paper, and this is the moment here when I realized that I had made a mistake and I should have put that frame on just yet. So I just was able to peel it up, thank goodness, and then I'll take my little piece here that's going to be the floor for my little bathtub. I'm going to layer that on, and then the good thing is I can just add a little extra glue and glue that frame back down, and no one will ever know that I made that mistake. So the next step that we're going to do is we are going to layer the bathtub with the bubbles. And so you'll see that the bubble die cut here, you're going to notice that it's got kind of this extra piece on the bottom, and that's so that it's really easy to glue on there. So you'll see that it's the perfect size there for a little tape runner. Just add it to there, and then you can layer it behind the bathtub really, really easily, which is great. Then I'm going to go ahead and kind of place the bathtub where I want it on the card. I've added some tape to the shower head, and then I'm going to glue that shower head directly to the card base. I'm doing the same thing with this little duck because I want those glued directly down, but I want the bathtub popped up eventually. I'm going to layer that little water coming out of the shower head, and now I've got some foam dots on my extra pieces, which I'm going to layer in front just to create some nice dimension. So I've got my bathtub and my little mama duck and the cute babies and all the little accessories which I can layer, and pop dotted just gives it this great dimension. Then next I'm going to take those little glittered bubbles and kind of use them to fill the space in the card and have them kind of floating up from the bathtub, which I think is really cute. So I've die cut a piece of white cardstock here with this little sentiment banner, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp Rub-a-Dub-Dub, a new baby to love, which you're going to see I'm going to change that in a second. But I stamped that sentiment first, and then I'm going to layer it on my card, decide how far I want it to go out, and then I'm just making a little tick mark so that I know where to trim it off. Then I can add some tape runner to that and then just layer that right on my card. Now, right after I layered that, I realized I kind of wanted another little glittered bubble, so I just lifted it up a little bit and layered that bubble behind it, which I think looks really nice with that sentiment above it. Now, at this moment was when I realized that what I really needed was more like a birthday card. So I decided to change the sentiment to the "It's your day, relax and enjoy." And I love that just by changing the sentiment, the card still works. So I was able to change it. Now I can use it as a birthday card. I'll stamp happy birthday on the inside, and that works just perfectly. I'm going to add another set of little glittered bubbles, and you can see just how gorgeous that glitter is and just how sweet this card is. I love the detail of the quilted backdrop, and I just love layering all the little bits and pieces from this stamp set. It just makes me happy. So as I was making this card, I realized that I already kind of had a bunch of good supplies out, and I wanted to use them and create a different card but with kind of a similar color scheme. So I used an outside in stitched rectangle, and I die cut white cardstock and some of that same Gotta Have gingham paper. I'm also going to create a 5.5 by 4.25 inch card base here. And then I'm going to take some of the daffodil paper from the Perfectly Plaid Spring collection and add that nice yellow color in. So here I have some vellum, and I'm going to heat emboss those little bubbles in white onto the vellum. So I've stamped in Versamark ink, which is a nice sticky ink. I'm going to add my white heat embossing powder on top, and then I can go ahead and heat those bubbles onto that vellum. The next thing I'm going to do is stamp those same bubbles in some mermaid ink, and I'm going to die cut those as well as the vellum bubbles there. So we've got those, and we've got our vellum bubbles. The next thing I'm going to do is actually layer these two pieces, but I'm going to slightly offset them so that way you can see the little blue color of the mermaid ink behind the white vellum there. And I feel like it just gives it this kind of really cool bubbly appearance. So you can see there how they're kind of offset, and I think it just looks really, really cool. So now what I'm going to do is take my little duck here and layer him between the vellum and the white cardstock so that you can still see him through the bubbles, which I think is just a really fun look. And then I'm going to layer the mama duck behind. Now this time I'm going to stamp the Rub-a-Dub-Dub and You Baby to Love sentiment onto the little floor there that I'm using that gingham as the floor again. I'm going to layer that on there, and then with some merman ink, I'm going to stamp some of those water and little splash marks. So I've got the little water bubbles and the splash marks, and I think it's just a really, really cute addition to the card. I've added some foam dots behind all of my stamped images, and I'm going to layer those onto the card. And I just love the little duck with the bubbles in front of him with the vellum. It just makes me smile. And so there I'm going to layer the two little baby ducks onto those little splash marks, and then also add my little bubbles to the card as well. I'm going to add foam dots to the back of this whole panel and then layer that onto my yellow pattern paper. And I love the turquoise, gray, and yellow together. And of course the ducks look great with that yellow pattern paper. And this card just makes me smile. It's just so sweet. And I love that when I had my supplies out, I tried to make a card with the same supplies and same colors, but they look really different from each other, which I think is really cool. And I need to remind myself to do that more often. Next, I've taken my stitched Hillside backdrop and I've die cut it from some white cardstock. And I'm going to take some Post-it note tape here and just mask off my frame and my hills here. So I'm going to mask off both sides of this frame, and then I'm going to mask off the top hill so that I can do some ink blending without getting it on that top hill just yet. Once I have all of those pieces ready, I can go ahead and start ink blending. So I'm going to have some Salty Ocean, and then Mermaid Lagoon, and then Faded Jeans for this. And I'm starting off of the cardstock and then going on in circular motion, just building up that color until it's the color that I want. And I just love ink blending. I find it really relaxing and really fun to do. So there's my Salty Ocean, and now I'm bringing in Mermaid Lagoon, which is a darker color, and then a little bit of that Faded Jeans. Last but not least, I layered a teeny bit of peacock feathers, which is like a greenish turquoise, because I wanted it to look like a pond, and I feel like ponds kind of have a little bit of green in them, so I added that on there. And then here I'm going to take that same piece of Post-it note tape, and now I'm going to layer it so that I don't get ink on that other little hill, which is now going to be parts of my pond. And so I'm going to do the same exact layering technique with the same 4 colors, but just separately onto this one. That way the bottom of this little hill is also the same as the bottom of the other one, and it's going to give it some really, really nice dimension. So here you can see as I peel off all of these papers, which I love doing this, it always feels like I'm doing a makeover reveal or something. So I take those little pieces off, and then now you can see how cool these layers look. Next up, I have a Grassy Hillside border, which I am going to die cut from some Cilantro cardstock. And then I've got that little piece there. It's going to layer behind there perfectly. And I'm also going to cut a Bayou backdrop here from some Cilantro cardstock too. Then next, I did this off camera, but I added a little bit of color with some Forest Moss Distress ink, just a little bit on there to give it some nice dimension. So you'll see right here how there's just a little bit of inking on there. I'm going to go ahead and trim off just those little viney pieces because that's what we're going to use for this card. I'm also going to trim down some perfectly plaid spring paper to be my sky. Now these little viney pieces, I'm just going to cut them off in little groups of 3 and then layer them with that grass just to give that kind of cool pond kind of look. So I love using that bayou backdrop in a different way by just using the vines from it, which is really, really fun. I'm adding a bunch of tape to the back of my grass and kind of holding that in place so that way I know where I want to put my little bayou backdrop vines that I'm going to add going the other way so that they look more like kind of like cattails or something kind of pond-like. So I'm just going to let that adhesive on the back of that grass hold those in place. And then I'm going to layer this whole piece onto my sky and press down so that my grass and my vines are just there on the card exactly where I need them. And that's going to kind of give me a guide as to where I'm going to stamp my sentiment. For this card, I'm doing I'm a Lucky Duck to Have You as My Friend. So I love that I can make a friendship card with this set too. I love that there's so many different kinds of cards and that you can create a cute little duck scene without the bathtub too. So now I'm going to go ahead and add some tape to the top of my little pond there and then layer my ducks behind. And by layering them behind and covering up their feet, it looks like they're floating in the pond, which I think is such a cute look. And I'm going to have the 2 little ducks because they're friends. It kind of goes along with the sentiment. Now, these images are from one of our new sets called Totally Awesome, which is a frog set, but I decided to borrow the lily pad and flowers and cattails from that set to kind of help set my scene, and I love that these two work so well together. So you'll see I'm taking some of those little images and tucking them behind the hills just to give them some nice dimension, and then I added a little pink color to my little flowers, and I'm going to layer those to the tops of the lily pads. Next, I'm going to layer this whole frame on top of my sky, and right here is when I started going, I don't know that I like that white frame. I was liking it at the beginning, but then it just started to look a little plain. So I die cut a stitched rectangle frame from some sticky note cardstock, and I layered that on top, and I loved how the yellow kind of picked up the yellow color of the ducks, and I feel like it made the whole scene really pop. So here I am creating a 4¼ by 5½ inch card base, and then I can go ahead and layer my whole scene on top of that. And I just love how this turned out. I loved using the hillside backdrop there instead of for snow, but for a pond, which was really, really fun. And I love mixing and matching so many dies and stamp sets. And then here you can see how cool it is that you can get so many looks and so many different cards with one stamp set, depending on if you use the bathtub or not, and depending on how you change up the sentiments. Next up, we have some gorgeous cards from the design team, and I love this one by Shari. I love how she used the puffy cloud borders to be bubbles for the ducks to be playing around in. And then this card by Yania is gorgeous. I loved how she used the bayou backdrop, and the way she colored her ducks is just so cool. Shari created this amazing baby shower decoration in the jar with the little marbles. Oh my gosh, it's just adorable. And I love this card by Elena. It's so sweet, and that pink background is just gorgeous. Jessica created a really cool card here. I love them playing around in the water with the little water splashing up. I just think it's so sweet. And then here's the card by Audrey that inspired me to create the one in the video today, and it is just adorable. This card by Lynette is so sweet. I love the perfectly plaid spring paper that she used with it. Those colors are just so much fun. And then Nicole's card is just gorgeous. I love that background she created. It's just beautiful. I love how Lizzie didn't use the ducks at all and just created this really cool relaxed card. It's just beautiful. And then Yanea had a similar idea, but she added our mermaid into the bathtub, which I think is just the sweetest thing ever. I love this card by Jessica with that cute heart and the awesome really rainbow papers. It's just beautiful. And then I love how Kristen created a scallop box card pop-up with this set. It works so well with this cool interactive die. And then Carolina got interactive too, and she's got that little duck popping out of the bathtub, which is just so sweet. And then I love how Julia added the Yeti into the bathtub with him playing with the car. It just makes me smile. So I cannot wait to see what you guys create with Rub-a-Dub-Dub, so make sure to share it with us. Thank you so much for watching today, and have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!